The bright side of addiction is recovery. You know, for many musicians, alcohol and music go hand in hand. Some can handle it, others not so much. In fact, there are many famous and not so famous singers and songwriters who fell as far down as you can fall, and then began a lifetime of long term recovery. Elton John, Ringo Starr, Steven Tyler, Bonnie Raitt, Steve Earle, Dion, and many, many others. Now, one up and coming singer is celebrating 5 years in long term recovery. And during that time, he was embraced by many miracles, including being featured on the Austin City Limits live showcase at the famed Moody Theater in Austin. He was also chosen for the highly rated NBC series The Voice. And not only was he selected to appear, he made it all the way to the finals during the 2019 season. Now, that led to a mentorship with the great Blake Shelton, one of the judges on The Voice. Blake called this rising star the most unique voice I have heard on The Voice. Usher called him a Top Gun. Gwen Stefani said, "Nobody has a voice that sounds like that." It's a country sound reminiscent of Joe Cocker and Chris Stapleton. His name? Ian Flanigan. I met Ian recently at the 47th Annual Conference of TAP, the Texas Association of Addiction Professionals, in San Antonio, Texas. We sat down prior to his conference concert to talk about music, writing, touring, and living one day at a time, one gig at a time. And he shared his amazing story of resiliency, determination, and his path to long-term recovery. We will hear that in just a moment. I'm Neil Scott, host of Recovery Coast to Coast, and following 15 years of nightly broadcasts on iHeartRadio in Seattle, we've now upgraded to a national podcast available to anyone at any time, featuring interviews with clinicians, authors, recovering celebrities, and everyday people in recovery, plus vetted resources for individuals, families, and friends, and amazing stories of everyday recovery. We invite you to enjoy it and to share it with your friends as well. Recovery is as recovery does. We would love to hear from you. Our email address is recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Recovery Coast to Coast is supported by the good folks at Sundown M Ranch, one of the top treatment centers in America. They have successfully treated well over 200,000 adults, adolescents, and their family members for the past 50-plus years. You know, there are nearly 30,000 residential addiction treatment facilities in the United States, each one claiming to be the biggest, the best, the most successful, and on and on and on. Well, Sundown M Ranch stands out among the crowd. Now, first of all, they're a nonprofit treatment program, so their rates are among the lowest, and they work with most major insurance companies. Secondly, they have been successfully treating adults and adolescents and their families since back in 1969. Sundown M Ranch is located outside of Seattle in Yakima, Washington, on 30 acres of land which they own at the mouth of the beautiful Yakima River Canyon. They are licensed, accredited, and certified, and they are long-standing members of NAATP. That's important. The National Association of Addiction Treatment Providers, adhering to a strong code of ethics. And third, their staff has been together for a long, long time. They're paid well, and they provide exemplary care. Many of their staff actually went through treatment at Sundown. Now, I could go on and on about Sundown, but what I'd like you to do is to just check out their website, sundown.org. It's very welcoming and very user-friendly. There's no hype, just rigorous honesty. In the future, if you know someone in need of effective, comprehensive, compassionate, and successful treatment, you'll have a bit of a head start in knowing what to do and where to go. Sundown.org. Sundown M Ranch, it's where recovery becomes a reality. And again, sundown.org, the website, Email is info@sundown.org, and you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The road to addiction recovery begins at Sundown M Ranch. Now let's head down to San Antonio, Texas, and my interview with one of the finalists in the 2019 season of The Voice on NBC TV, Ian Flanigan, a rising star, a singer, songwriter in long-term recovery. Visiting with Ian Flanigan down here in Texas at the TAP Conference, Texas Association of Addiction Professionals, a great conference every year. I was just so psyched when I found out that Ian Flanigan was going to be at the conference. I've got some really good friends in upstate New York, Steve and Terry Massardo and Bruce Hildenbrand and Gene, and they said, you got to somehow link up with Ian Flanigan when you can. So I had him on my list of people to try to get a hold of and contact by phone, and I found out that he was going to be down here. So we have been sitting here for the last 20 minutes before we started this interview talking about Saugerties, New York, and Athens, and Hudson, and the great places up there in upstate New York. Ian, it's a pleasure to have you on Recovery Coast to Coast. Your career has really taken off. Take me back, if you would, to Valentine's Day 2020 and tell us a little bit about what happened.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. It's really great to get to sit back, and apparently we have so many friends in common.
Yes.
It's been amazing. Yeah, so back Valentine's Day 2020, my family and I are living on the road full time. And we got a call from a friend of mine who was working with Bob Schneider out in Austin. They asked me if I wanted to be a part of Bob Schneider's Valentine's Day show at Austin City Limits. So, of course, I just said, thank you so much. I will be there. And, so we had a really wonderful time and learned a lot from Bob. Got to watch him in his element. It was just really great.
And from there, what was the connection with The Voice?
Well, it's a really interesting and it's so sad it's funny in a way. And after the Valentine's Day show, we had been touring on this really high coming off of, Austin City Limits, a lifetime dream goal. And we landed in Nashville in a trailer park where we were going to work for 4 months in order to have a free stay. So we get to Nashville and it just starts raining and downpouring. And basically the tornado that hit East Nashville that same year came the week after we arrived. Soon after that, COVID really started just spreading like wildfire, and everybody was losing tours, everybody was losing their jobs, and I had literally gotten down to $80 in the bank account. We were not doing good. We were not feeling great about our choices, especially living in a van with a daughter, and it just wasn't great.
Your daughter was what, 5?
My daughter, she was, turning 6. So if you can imagine 3 of us in a 24-foot Winnebago with a 6-year-old.
Tight
quarters. And when it rains, man, it gets smaller. And all the time we were grateful for it. And the experience was a beautiful thing. But we did get down to having about no money. And we had one last show before the gigs were all canceled. And it was at the Mercy Lounge in Nashville, Tennessee. I wasn't going to go, but my fiance, Ayla, she was like, get your butt up. We're finishing out these tours. And that ended up being this open mic, this small little open mic where there was a scout for the show The Voice. And around 11:30 at night, we were in the green room with Kamea, our daughter. And he comes back and he says, hey, Ian, we really loved your videos. We really love your sound. And I'd love to see if you'd want to be a part of this show this year. And the audition period ends tomorrow. So I was like, I just lost a year's worth of work, so I really am grateful for that. And I said, thank you, yes. And that is exactly how that happened. And I actually was brought on to the show as an alternate in case somebody was sick or couldn't make it. So that's how it happened for me. And the process with COVID took months to get going. No, they weren't even sure if there was actually going to be a series that year. But it happened to work out, and I ended up being involved. I don't question it. I just say thank you, and I just keep going.
Absolutely. It's done wonders, obviously, for you professionally, but let's talk about Ian personally. Let's talk about Ian being in recovery.
Yes.
How bad did it get for Ian, and when was the end, or as I like to say, the beginning? the beginning of recovery?
You know, it was such a tangled mess for so long. As you know, my hometown is Saugerties, New York. I'm
Mm-hmm.
from upstate. It's a very small town. The recovery is not very large up there. There is some rooms, but it is not widely taught, and that's why things like this are so important. Shows like yours, and I started off a very hard partying kid, and my town is probably 8 bars within 50 feet. That's
Yeah.
what it is. It's a small drinking town, and it's less now, but during those years, as a musician, I mean, I was 17 when I left my home to go to Orlando to pursue music full time, and to be honest, I was paid in alcohol since I was 17, 18 years old.
Mm.
For the first 3 years of touring as a kid, I didn't know what I was doing, and everybody I was playing with, I didn't realize at the time, but they were also heavily abusing substances and alcohol. And when you're a kid and you're paid $25, but all you can drink, it kind of it leads to bad habits, And flash forward, 5, 7 years, I was a real mess and didn't really know how to live sober at all. I was using many different kinds of substances, a lot of narcotics, and just liquor every day, very early on. And I just didn't realize that it wasn't normal. And I was also working labor jobs where I would be using machinery. I built instruments for a long time. I'd be on a bandsaw for 8 hours a day, never questioning my habits at all. And I ended up getting arrested a few times later on, and I got, a couple disorderly conducts here, a couple DWIs. Nowadays I'm so far removed from it, being 5 years sober, and those were years before that, that I'm very comfortable talking about it all, because it's all just, it was not coming from a place of anger or anything. It was just coming from a place of clouded unguidedness.
Did anybody say, Ian, you're in trouble? Can I help you?
At the time, I think people are so concerned over these topics that they don't know how to help
Hmm.
you, and you can almost be isolated for it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not a punishment, but it definitely, people don't know how to handle it. And when you're really a mess, you're a mess. You're hard to wrangle. You're hard to talk to. And I think I was very stubborn and hard to talk to for so many years. But what really happened is I checked myself into a rehab center after I completely destroyed my van. I went to a horrible wreck at around like 80 miles an hour, and I lost everything in there.
Did you get hurt?
I went through 2 telephone poles, rolled the
Mm.
van. I had
Jeez.
everything, weights, I had knives, I had all my clothes, my instruments in there, and I rolled the van totally destroyed. And I remember the date, it was November 14th. And basically, I remember the lights came on. I had no seatbelt on. It was crazy.
Oh.
I remember the lights popped on, and I had to kick the door open. And I kick this door open, and I walk out through the woods, and it's like the 4th of July, like just electric wires just dancing. It was crazy. And I remember that was a moment where I realized that somebody else is going to get hurt. It's not just me. And after that, I ended up calling somebody who then called the cops on me, and I got arrested there. That was okay. It was what had to happen. But I remember after I got that DWI, I checked myself into a rehab because I just realized it was like,
In New York?
I actually went to one in Palm Beach down
Mm.
in Florida.
Hmm.
That's a huge recovery
Right, right.
down there. But I just, it was just crazy. It was just out of control. I didn't even remember half of it. Terrible altercations with the police on my end. I was a fool. But after that, before I went off, I remember going to the junkyard to see this crumpled up van. They never even searched the van. They probably could have got me on a couple other things that they found was in it. But I remember going in, there was a wave in it. This van just melted by hitting, these telephone poles. And I've never talked about this story, so I'm actually talking about it with you probably the first time. But I remember opening the door, just completely shattered, and my guitar was completely untouched. And it was in a soft case. And I'm talking metal bent, everything destroyed. And I look at this guitar and it's completely unharmed. And I said, whatever
Wow.
it is, this is where I'm going for the rest of my life. Never
Wow.
gonna stop. Yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
yeah, and it still hits me today thinking about it. But that was kind of the start. I'll say that's the start. And then, you know,
Did treatment take for you?
Oh my gosh, it was brutal. I wanted it so bad, but it didn't. I was just so reckless. Now that I'm thinking about it, I was just such a troublemaker. I got sober, was all about it. I got out. It was a 6-week program. I was feeling good. You know, the main thing, the first thing is to get the distance. Just like lock me in a bubble and throw me in the ocean. And that's what I needed. I was just so physically dependent at that time. And I remember getting out of there feeling very, very good, very positive, but I was still 25 and I was still in the music. I was like, I got to get back to work. I don't know how to make money, like good cash money besides these shows, because my labor jobs paid me like $10 an hour. It was just brutal. You know, you bust your body, you don't feel good. That's all you want to do. And no, it didn't work. I moved to Georgia to record a record, and the rent was cheap, and there was a ton of moonshine. And you know, I'm not going to ever talk bad about the beautiful science of creating such a thing, but it is not a medicine for me. It is a poison. And, you know, I quickly fell back into my old ways and trouble, and basically found myself in similar circumstances again. And it was the second time that I checked myself into a detox up in New York. I ran from Georgia, got up in New York.
A geographic.
I was just a walking terrible thing, man. I kept getting in trouble in Georgia. Then I was like, you know what? I just can't stay. It's just trouble down here in Georgia. And then I was like, I'm going to go up to New York.
It'll be different there.
Yeah, I was in New York for 3 days. I just can't stay anywhere. Everybody's got a problem, you know? And it was me. Everywhere I went, I was just trouble. And basically, that's the one where I soon after that was like, I cannot keep handling these. You know, it's expensive. And I'm not coming from a lot of money in this world, so it was a lot of labor, a lot of 3 jobs, which puts you back into the cycle of just feeling desperate. But that was the detox. I remember sitting there. I couldn't smoke cigarettes, and I couldn't do anything. And I was just like, this cannot be my life. I cannot do it anymore. And it had been years and years, and that was it.
Sick and tired of being sick and tired.
So tired of it. And that was really the day. And I was just like, I'm going to lose my music career. I had this second chance at life, you know, where I shouldn't be alive right now. And here I am just drinking it away for nothing. And my music was not flourishing anymore. I had a really good run early on, but I had gotten to a point where I just couldn't handle myself professionally. So that was really it. That was it. It was for my life and for the music. And then soon after, I found my now partner, Ayla, and her daughter. And you know, kind of like out of the frying pan into the fire, kind of like that. Kids are intense, but I mean, my goodness, it sure put me on a good path. And then having other people in my life to take care of, besides, you know, I was an only child and all that, so it was like kind of meeting that family unit that I didn't have before.
Where'd you meet Ayla?
We actually from the same town.
Oh, from
She
Socrates.
actually used to be a bartender at one of the bars. She was like, "Yeah, you were a mess."
That is rich.
Oh my gosh, God. You can't make it up, man. So she seen me at my worst, and if she could love me then, you know, that's all I could ever ask for.
Wow.
Yeah, I know it's a long, drawn-out story, but that's what they are when it's lifelong.
So you then went into the rooms. What was the first year like for you?
Oh my gosh, the first year was just felt like a cat on a hot tin roof. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to talk. I didn't know how to be sober. I didn't realize how I was just never sober. And like sobriety was this weird thing. It felt good, but I also didn't. I don't know. At that point though, I had totally succumbed to being like, I'm in this. Like, take me, figure it out. Somebody help me. But I'll be honest. I never had a sponsor. I couldn't get one. I was begging, and I couldn't get one.
Really?
Oh yeah, never. I've still to this day never had one. And I'll tell you, my recovery is different. I was in this small town. I remember going in, almost crying at these meetings, being like, I need a sponsor, like I'm gonna die, and couldn't get one. I don't know if I wasn't that crazy like, compared to the rooms. There's crazy people out here. I was like, I'm not the craziest in this room. Like I need a sponsor, but it didn't happen. And my best friend in this world got sober with me, and what we did, and when I say this, just to paint the picture, we both worked full time. He worked as a mechanic in a bowling alley. I worked as a woodworker, basically on a bandsaw all day. These were not glorious jobs, but they paid, and it wasn't a lot. And they didn't fire you if you didn't show up. So what we did is we fished every day for about 6 months. That's all we did. We fished. We left work. We wouldn't do it. We didn't care. All we did was fish. We just fished, and fishing really solidified my first year of sobriety.
Wow.
Stayed in the creek, no boat, just walking through the woods in the creek. We would fish from sun up to well beyond dark. And we were just like, as long as we don't go drink, it doesn't matter. Lose the jobs. Don't need money. I could live in the woods. I don't care. Like, we were done. And he did it with me. And that's the, God, I love him. But, that's what we did. We didn't have the AA rooms that I wanted, but we had, we only need 2 people for a meeting. So that's
and some coffee.
And some coffee. We had a ton of coffee. My goodness. And he's the only other man that I would say is crazier than me. And but yeah, that's how my first year went. It was really brutal. It was not
Any music?
I didn't gig for a while. I took time off. It wasn't going to happen. I did have a trouble being in the bars for the first year. Now, I mean, my life is completely surrounded by everybody drinking, and I don't
a lot of slippery places, but it doesn't bother Ian?
Does not bother me. In fact, it reminds me of pleasant times at times. Somebody told me the best advice. They were like, treat it like a diner. You don't go to a diner for 6 hours. Go to a diner for a half hour. Go for an hour. Go home. Like, stop going places. And like, I would go to bars when they opened, and I would be there after they closed the doors.
Wow.
And it's like, of course, just treat it like a diner. So that advice actually still sticks with me today. And I'm like, it's been 45 minutes. I should get out of here. So I don't know, because I actually don't stay around. But it doesn't bother me during that time.
What does recovery mean to you, Ian?
Well, for me, there's no definition, because recovery is basically the class I'm taking. So I'm a student. I'm a forever student, and I think that is the only mindset that, for me, I could ever have. Because the day I start thinking I know something, the day other stuff might follow. And I don't like to preach. I don't like to think I know anything. I'm just learning. And recovery is basically my textbook. I'm just meeting people in recovery, in music especially, is rare to me. And when I do find it, it's just a beautiful thing. And I know it can feel isolating, but recovery to me is a journey that I'm just beginning. I meet people, like you said before, that have like 35 years. I have 5 years sobriety, and it feels like 35 years. But just trying to live a happy life and give that happiness to others.
Yeah, and the whole thing with time, people say, well, he's got 25 years, he's got 30 years. Well, the person who woke up this morning first has the most sobriety.
That's right.
It's all about today.
Today.
You get through today, you're a winner.
Yep.
You're an absolute winner. Tell me about Blake Shelton and your relationship with him.
Oh, Blake is a great dude. He kind of single-handedly kind of gave me a career this year.
Yeah.
So on the show, The Voice, he's the only one that turned around for me, and he kept me all the way up to the finale of the show. Blake, after the show, because during the show, it's a lot of camera time. It's a lot of fast-moving stuff. You don't get to hang out for hours and just casually get to know each other. But you do spend a lot of time. It's just on the clock, in the studio, recording, and it's a lot of advice.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very honest with me, very open, and his advice still sticks with me today. His critiques and his mentorship meant a lot to me, but he was very humble. He was very honest, and he still to this day is just so down to earth. He's helped me. He's recorded with me since the show. The last time I saw him was at the finale of The Voice, or the last time that I saw him on the show was at the finale. Shook his hand, said thank you. He goes, where are you going to be? I said, I'll be in Dallas in a couple days. I got to fly to Florida, and I got some shows, because we went back on tour the next day. And he hooked me up with a gig at his old Red in Tishomingo, Oklahoma, right then. And one in Orlando the day I got off the show. He doesn't mess around. And then after that, he comes and features on my new single that's dropping in 2 weeks. Blake Shelton. He's met me in Nashville at Starstruck Studios, biggest studio you can go to. Guy walks in the room and just lays it down. Sounds great. He's hung out with the family and the label, and he's just really a great human.
You wrote your first song, I believe, when you were 11.
Yes.
What was the song, and what was the process then? and how is it different
You know,
now?
it's funny that you say that because my mother and I used to make little songs in the car. It's kind of what we did, and we didn't really have like phones and games to have, so we would just write these songs. But I remember the first song, I was really into this rhyme scheme where I was like, "We can talk about the weather or whether we're in love," and I was like, "What a little player." 11 years old, and it's obviously painfully corny, but at 11, I was just really into like the wordplay of like, that was my stuff, and that was my hook. And I can't remember the verses, but I remember that being like my first song. I don't know, but it was good.
And what is the process for writing now? It's obviously not in the car.
No, no, it's very professional. It's songwriters are, whereas we're super casual, but also it's down to business quick. Like a lot of times, there's two styles. I have songs that I write from the guitar that I've been working on still for about 4 months. Some are like really long sagas that might not ever see the light of day, but I work on them. And then other times in a writing session, a lot of times what will happen is there'll be two or three other people. We'll sit down. If we don't know each other, we usually have about an hour where we just hang out. And then within 4 hours of that, we'll have a finished song for market towards radio, and we'll have it recorded. So within 4 hours, it's a real process. It's a lot of work, you know.
It's like a job.
It is a job. Yeah, it's almost like a job. No, it is a job. We all take it the most serious. It is what we live to do, and we want to be the best we can be at all times.
How has recovery influenced your songwriting?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. I when I have songs pitched to me for a music career, it is very hard because in country music, you know, 22 out of 25 songs might be drinking songs. And I just feel to be authentic to myself and to be an advocate for sobriety that I cannot sing those songs. And so I turn a lot of things down, and I also in the rooms, if we're writing for me in mind, I always have to say no, we're not going that direction. And if we're writing for other people, of course we can, because I could also sing about it for other people. And there's also the point of singing a song just because it's a great song and people love it and bringing joy to people is a positive thing. But for me as an artist, there is a line that I walk, and I'm still figuring it out. There's like I have a line in my new single "Grow Up," which Blake is featuring on, and in the chorus it says, "We're never gonna grow up. They might be right, 'cause tonight we're raising something cold up." And that to me is just a celebratory time where we all can party together and have a good time and celebrate. But I'm not saying shots, 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 beer, beer,
Right.
beer, liquor, liquor, liquor. And that's my thing, is there is a way to say everything without being that specific so that you can include people who aren't. So the journey continues, and I'm always just trying to search for how to include everybody in all songs that I'm working on and not isolate people in recovery.
That working as a songwriter and that disciplined process in Nashville is one thing. But what happens when the muse hits and you and Ayla are driving along in the van and suddenly there's a song that comes into Ian's mind?
And like one of those, I write it. And
Yeah.
I write, I will never, it's just art at the end of the day.
Hmm.
It's expression. If it comes to your mind, it was meant to be expressed, express it.
Mhm.
And it doesn't mean I might lead with it, but it doesn't mean it can't exist. And I have one song called "Devil in My Hands," and I think for me the best way to actually answer your question is I treat it with perspective, and I treat it based off of past, present, and future. And for me, to reminisce about good times is different than celebrating good times today, or to drink over somebody in a sad way. I don't do that now, but
Mm.
I can talk about having done that and then coming to a light at the end of the tunnel. So it's really perspective for me. There's nothing wrong with a drinking song. In fact, I do write them, but I write them from the perspective of having done something or having been in this place, and now I don't. Now it's a brighter day in a sense.
Hmm. And as you're writing, as the muse hits you with ideas, you have to write them down right away.
I do a lot of cell phone recordings.
Okay.
I
Okay.
I do a lot of voice memos. My phone is just a terrible unorganized mess.
Yeah.
It's and I'll go through it later tonight even, and I'll be
Yeah.
like, wow, I had 4 ideas buried in this garbage.
I do a lot of writing myself, a lot of poetry,
Nice.
and I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll come up with something, an idea, a thought, a line, and the worst lie I tell myself is I will remember that in the morning.
It's the worst habit to make.
It is. So I've got to
There's
turn the
wor-
light
yeah.
on and I got to write it down, regardless of what it means.
Yep.
I've got scraps of paper and
Just something.
napkins and everything, but you got to write it down.
I do that with vocal melodies where I'll have something where I'm like, oh, that is a hook. That's a
Mm.
hook, and I'll remember that one for sure.
Yeah.
You just never do.
No. What comes first, lyrics or music?
For me, 90% of the time is the guitar.
Mm.
I really do work from a chord structure because I'm a baritone a lot of the time, and it just helps. Like I know my keys, I know what kind of works for me, and yeah, I really start with the guitar usually, a riff.
When did you pick up a guitar for the first time?
Probably about 10. I was
Mm.
given a Art and Lutherie guitar from my mom, and I don't know, it was really hard to play, and I remember just like working
Mm.
at it all day, and then I realized like a year later that I was playing with strings that had an action that was like 5 times too high, which if anybody doesn't know what the action is, it's the distance between how close the string is to the fretboard,
Yeah.
meaning how hard you have to push to make a sound. So once somebody told me that like I was playing an unplayable instrument, they set it up for me and it was off to the races.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know how anybody does this. I was just squeezing the thing, but yeah, a lot of help.
When you were struggling with your addiction, what about your mom and what about your recovery and your mom?
Oh my gosh, I can't imagine the hell I was putting everybody through. But I think it was just the worry. Like my parents are very kind people, and they don't, you know, we all had our arguments, we all had our disagreements. But the main thing that I know is different is they say they sleep now. Before they were like just nervous all the time. And I was
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
yeah, they just didn't know where I was at any time. I never contacted people. Nobody knew. And I think that they just finally can rest a little bit better now.
Mm,
And I think
mm,
that's, especially as a parent now, like being a parent, like if Kamea is gone for like out of view for 5 seconds, I didn't know where she is. I'll panic so hard. And I'm like, I can only imagine. Like my parents knew very well what I was doing. So that amount of stress alone, I can never apologize for it. So I'm
Wow.
trying to make up now, just have really good experiences. Like I just went to Maine with my parents now this a couple months ago for a month, and we took our camping. We just went camping for a month and just hung out and had some good family time. And it's like to know that I can make those positive memories is what it's all about now.
Tell me about the Flanavan.
Oh my goodness, yeah. The Flanigan was a 24-foot Winnebago Class C motorhome. It was a 2001. It was basically just a gem, and it was a small little motorhome. But my family and I, Ayla, my fiance, she got in a car accident, and we had been planning on figuring touring out a little bit better as a family. But she got in a car accident and ended up needing to have 2 spinal fusion surgeries.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a terrible year. And long story short, she was a champion and started really recovering well, and she did the work. And we decided that we weren't going to be able to swing the winter off a musician's salary the way it was. So we actually sold everything at a gigantic yard sale, sold everything we had, and we bought this motorhome. And we got this motorhome. We were like, okay, we're going to live in the driveway in it for a month, figure it out. Had leaks, it was a panic machine. I was like, I don't know what to do. I gotta fix leaks. It's like there's a kid in here, and we basically just hit the road and went to Arizona. And we did not have a good welcoming. We found tornadoes everywhere we went. It's terrifying. But the van was our home, and it inspired everything that happened to this day. I only was on The Voice because of that van's journey
Wow.
that we took together. If we did not do that, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
No such thing as coincidence, God
Hey,
incidence.
I love that.
Tell me about Hope Rocks.
Oh my gosh, Hope Rocks is it's a beautiful organization in upstate New York. It's one of the only music festivals that is around destigmatizing mental illness, depression, addiction.
Where's it centered?
Cantine Field in Saugerties, New York.
In
It's
Saugerties.
about a mile from my parents' house.
No kidding.
Yeah, Joe DeFino, Brad Hofstetter, Bob Circasano, John. Oh my gosh, everybody's up there. John Kaczynski, everybody that puts all their life energy into this. I mean, such such passionate people, as you know, like much like here. It's
Yeah.
just passion driven, and they're just trying to illuminate the darkness and make a community about recovery and bring people together in a real way. They have speakers that come on in between the sets of different bands that talk about their recovery. It's been going on for years now, about 5 years, and I feel really great to be on the advisory board with them. And I'm growing a lot too because I'm not a counselor. I am just in recovery myself, and I'm working towards how can I help this mission? Like, how can I help people? And it's just a great platform to be involved in. But they are really amazing. I urge anybody to look them up. Come out to the next one next year in August. It's the only one of its kind.
And they hold it in Saugerties.
Yes, they do.
My goodness.
We're trying to find a way to get it out a little bit more mobile in a few other places and states, and it's just one of those things where music and recovery is difficult because music usually goes hand in hand with beer sales, and it shows, you know.
Hope rocks and recovery rocks.
Hope rocks and recovery rocks. Yes.
Where do you, I know it's one day at a time in recovery, but where do you see your career in the next year or two? What do you hope to do? What do you plan to do?
Well, it has been really wonderful living on the road for years. I will live touring for the rest of my life till the day I die, or I can't. You know, whatever comes first, and that's my life. I don't wish that for my daughter forever, though. And we've done what we had to do based off of finances, and I really want to get her into a school. We've been homeschooling, which is great, but I really do want her to have like a house and something stable. You know, it's a lot. I think it's been a really beautiful way to grow up as a kid. She has seen the country. She'll see the country 10 times again. But, you know, it's important for kids to have stability. I really believe in that. And so that's the next thing. I'm going to try to find a home base for her. You know, she's going to be 8 years old now. She started when she was 5. So I know that doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it is a lot of time as a kid. These are the most developmental years for her brain.
Yeah, you're looking at settling in Nashville?
Yeah, we are at that, or maybe down in Alabama or something, but right around the hub.
In closing, Ian, what do you say to an aspiring musician who may be now where you were 5 years ago, struggling with addiction, struggling with a music career, and lost?
Yeah. You know, there's no great one-liner that I wish I could drop. The main thing is just, if it's for an artist, it would be one good gig is worth 10 bad gigs. And I think where people get broke down is in the bad shows that don't pay. They take a lot of energy. You got to set up all your stuff. You don't make a lot of money, but you get paid in booze. Stop taking them. You know, do whatever you have to do to remove yourself from those shows, because I think the mindset is what changes over time, and it's the fact that you need to do them. You need to do them. That's your job. You can't do it without them. But there is a way, and it's really about, I think, it's about taking that mental inventory of what are the places that cause me to wake up and feel bad? What are the places and the people that make me, like, it's like, in your heart. If you take that true mental inventory of what is healthy and what's not, make it. And sometimes when I wrote that list, it would be absolutely every single person and every single place I go is bad. And I don't go there anymore, and I don't know those people anymore. And that's what you have to do. You got to make that commitment to put the music first over the party,
Yeah.
Otherwise, the advice, man, we could talk for days about it, but it's really just about that mental inventory and holding yourself accountable to at least know you're going back to the same place you shouldn't be going.
And when you get into recovery, the only thing you have to change is everything.
Every single thing.
And it starts with the mindset.
But it is a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Even though it feels terrible.
Yeah. Onward. Thank you very much, Ian. I appreciate you taking time to be with us on Recovery Coast to Coast. I wish you continued success, one gig at a time and one day at a time as well.
Hey, thank you so much, man.
We're going to take a short time out to hear from our sponsorship partner, Sundown M Ranch. We will be back in just 30 seconds, and I'll tell you how you can listen to the concert that we talked about the concert that Ian Flanigan did in San Antonio during the 47th Annual TAP Conference. We'll be right back after this.
Are you afraid? Afraid of life without drugs and alcohol? There is help and hope at Sundown M Ranch. At Sundown, the focus is on you and your disease. You will learn how to live without depending on drugs and alcohol. Sundown M Ranch is nationally recognized for effective and affordable alcohol and drug treatment programs. Reclaim your life. Replace your fears with hope. Go to www.sundown.org right now to learn more.
Thanks for listening to that and for supporting our sponsor, Sundown M Ranch. I hope you enjoyed my visit with Ian Flanigan. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to share any music on a podcast for copyright reasons. However, in the show notes, I have put a link to SoundCloud where you'll be able to hear the entire Ian Flanigan concert. I hope that you check it out. Well, that wraps up this edition, number 1514 of the National Podcast, Recovery Coast to Coast. If you've enjoyed this edition of Recovery Coast to Coast, the National Podcast, we'd love to hear from you. First of all, please hit the subscribe or follow button. It's free, and you'll be notified the next time we publish a podcast. Secondly, send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. recoverycoasttocoast@comcast.net. Third, feel free to write a review of our ongoing podcast. And lastly, kindly tell one or two of your friends about it. That also helps us to carry the message. And join us next time for America's Voice for Recovery, Recovery Coast to Coast, the National Podcast. And if you know anyone who's experiencing problems with alcohol or any other drug, here's a 24-hour national helpline that offers free information and confidential treatment referrals. Spanish-speaking individuals are available on this line as well. It's 1-800-622-4357, which is 1-800-622-HELP. I'm Neil Scott reminding you to stay healthy, live in gratitude, and be kind to others. Remember, the bright side of addiction is recovery. Pass it on.